Welcome to Die Hard on a Blank, the podcast where we explore the influence of Die Hard on action cinema, one action movie at a time. I'm Philip Gawthorne, and with me as always is Liam Billingham, and today's film is Speed 2, Cruise Control.
It's already going off the rails.
It's already off the rails
on a cruise
in the spirit
ship.
of this movie.
Oh my goodness. Good Lord. Oh my goodness. Started on a cruise ship. You know, there's only one person.
No. I want to hear the full voice for that.
You want me to do it again? Okay, let's do it again. All right.
Got to have the full voice.
Phil, just cue me what today's film is.
Today's film is Speed 2, Cruise Control.
It's Die Hard on a cruise ship. Oh boy, thank you, Kris. I appreciate you bringing it back. Ladies and gentlemen, the only guest we could have had for this episode is the world's foremost speed and Speed 2 expert, Kris Tapley, coming back to the show. Welcome back, Kris.
Somebody had to do it.
It had to be you. That feels like a good description of this movie. Well, we had to do it. The first one made a lot of money. Let's do it again.
That's pretty much it.
Now, Kris,
thanks for having me back, guys.
You're so welcome.
We're happy.
Our Speed, the episode we did about Speed, often many people have said to us that's genuinely their favorite episode. They love it. For anyone that doesn't know, and how dare you, but Kris is the architect behind the 50 miles per hour podcast, which is the Speed Oral History show. And we want to say, right up top, you did an amazing episode about Speed 2 specifically, and where you lay out basically how we got here, the disaster. There's no other way to describe it that this kind of film became. But what if you're interested in all of that, and if you're interested in, because it's really, really interesting, the journey of the development 42. Of it, episode 42.
Put a link in the notes to this.
50 miles per hour, Kris's podcast. So all of that stuff is there. And it's really, really interesting. What I want to ask you, though, right off the top, knowing that you were such a huge fan of the original Speed when it came out, what's your relationship with this movie? Like, were you excited for it when it came out? Were you cynical? Did you see it at the theater? Did you not see it? Couldn't you just take us to the inception point of where your relationship with Speed 2 began?
That reminds me, I wanted to go to the garage and see if I have a ticket, because I've got all my movie tickets going back to 95.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's rad.
I may have seen it in the theater. All I know for sure is that I wasn't excited for the movie because of the clear lack of Keanu Reeves. I was like, who is this? What is this? And certainly the premise that we're going to talk about plenty, putting it on a boat. It didn't have the kinetic energy of Speed. And I just generally wasn't excited for the sequel, which is odd because obviously I was a massive fan of Speed. And even then, I mean, I guess in 97, I would have been, 10th grade or something, 9th grade. I just didn't feel excited to go see a follow-up to that movie. It was sort of apparent from the trailers and the TV spots. Everything just made it clear that this was going to be lesser than.
Kind of dead on arrival, right? Like, yeah, but that's so telling that as arguably the world's biggest Speed fan, and you talked on that episode about how that was the movie that unlocked your interest in filmmaking, and when this movie comes out, you were already not pumped for it. That is a huge, because even movies that, and you did another fantastic episode that was about the most disappointing sequels of all time, even something like, say, The Phantom Menace, no one was going to that thinking it was going to be bad. People knew it was going to suck. Mm-hmm. They kind of, that's really weird. That just doesn't happen. And I think it's so that to me is like very, very telling. Liam, did you see this one when it came out?
So it's funny, Kris, I think we had the same reaction. So I saw Speed either opening night. I saw Speed the night of the Bronco chase. I came home and the Bronco chase was on TV. I remember that very clearly because my dad was like, holy shit, we just saw Speed and now we're watching this. And then I saw it a week later again. And then I think it's one of the first movies I saw at least twice, maybe 3 times in the theater. And I, well documented, love it. I remember seeing the preview for this and being like, nope, I'm not seeing this. And I didn't see it. I didn't see it until this week. It felt like Yeah, exactly. I almost did this stupid podcast. There feels like there was this like collective unconscious decision to reject this movie, despite it making. I mean, it didn't do well, but it made $160 million worldwide. So it's people saw it, but no one talks about it. It's memory hold, right? To some extent.
Yeah.
So
yeah.
I had no relationship to it until this week, and it took me. It was a hard watch. I couldn't. There's things I actually think could have been great about this movie, but I felt completely disconnected from it the whole time.
And frankly, if I didn't see it in the theater, I wouldn't have seen it until like a year later when it came out on HBO, because I know I didn't rent it or anything like that. I don't recall seeing it on VHS or anything. So yeah, I don't think I saw this one until HBO, I'm guessing.
I didn't see it until like 2 weeks ago. And, Kris has been giving me shit about this for months, because when we lined you up for this show, I said, naively, one of the things we try and do on this show is like, let's give this was a foundational tenet of the show. And I literally had a document that was like, when we started the show, every movie gets a fair trial.
Right.
Was my, regardless of reputation, whether it's Die Hard or Under Siege 2, you come with a fresh slate and we'll give you like a fair shake. So I genuinely thought there must be something some drop I can squeeze out of this film of positivity. And so I'd made this comment to Kris about, look, we'll try and keep it positive. And we will keep it positive in terms of our vibes. But I fucking hate this movie. I hate that this movie exists. I don't have one good thing to say about it, apart from Jason Patric's Hawaiian shirt, which looked cool. Other than that, I detest this movie so hard. But Kris, before we move in, and I have a couple of other things I want to say about this off the top about my opinion. Where do you land on this? Can you summarize concisely just how you feel about it and your general thoughts on it?
You just put it pretty concisely. I mean, I'll say this much: I was glad to hear that you had such a reaction to it, because it took the onus off of me. I thought I was going to be the guy coming in here just both barrels, and I hate to do that to my friend Jan, my buddy, my friend. But no, I will say it's sort of put well by Mark Gordon in the episode that I did on Speed 2, which is that Jan de Bont didn't have experience developing material.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And this was going to be his show for better or worse. I mean, it's right there at the beginning. It's a Blue Tulip production. He's on the screenplay. He's thoroughly a part of the creative process here. And it's arguable as to whether he can develop material. He's clearly a fantastic filmmaker. And frankly, there's some stuff in the movie that is fun if it was in a good movie. But the bottom line is, from the ground up, the thing is just ill-conceived.
Yeah.
And therefore ill-executed and ill-fated. And I will say that the crushing thing to me, and I imagine this will come up as a separate point, but it utterly ruins Annie's character.
Yep.
Yeah.
It destroys her. It's not even her anymore. It doesn't feel like her.
Right out the gate.
Frame of her in this movie. It's like a complete character betrayal.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well,
and I also want to say
about Annie, because we'll get into that in that section.
Can I do an insult sandwich, like instead of a compliment sandwich? Can I do insult, compliment, insult? So yeah, I think it ruins Annie's character as my insult. My compliment is that I think Jan de Bont can't help but make a movie look good. So purely on like a camera cinematography level, this movie looks good, and there are even a couple shots that I think are like that sort of moving, constant in motion camera that Jan de Bont does, like that documentary aesthetic combined with like big budget action filmmaking. That's the best compliment that I can pay this movie, is that I think it looks dope. My final insult is that it doesn't hold together and it doesn't cohere, and I spent the whole time feeling like, I was a million miles away from caring about the characters, but it does look good.
Yeah, just watch it with the sound off. By all means. I tried to rewatch it last night ahead of this. I thought, I've watched it. I've dealt with the trauma.
Phil, your self-hate is like too strong.
Well, no, hear me out. Let me just get back in the zone a bit, and I'll just put it on in the background, and I was like, I am so angry. I'm like, I had to turn it off. And what's crazy is the best scene in the film is the opening sequence, and the opening sequence is terrible. Like, it's so stupid. It's so bad. But here's you know, I want to give, you know, you've probably got a bit of a sense of how I feel about this film. But here I have a thought experiment.
It's like a 3-starer for you.
Yeah.
Is this a 5-star, 3-star film?
It certainly is not a 5-star, 3-star film. Here's my question for you guys. And to the point, as you just said, you distilled it into this expression, ill-conceived, right? It's doomed because of its concept. Think about this for a second. I want to ask you guys this. If you had applied the same thinking to a sequel to Die Hard that was applied to this, what would that have been? Now, just think about that for a second. Imagine Holly McClane has remarried and coincidentally to another cop from the same unit.
Al Powell.
And they got caught up in a terrorist plot. Like, is there any way that gets, like, even commissioned, let alone greenlit, right?
I would hope not.
You're right. No, and my other point about that is, like, there's a famous story about Bruce Willis on the set of Die Hard 4 and defending Len Wiseman from studio interference, right? I think Kevin Smith told this story in one of his books. And basically, he's on the phone trying to get them to, like, back off Wiseman and all the interfering. And eventually, you're listening to Bruce Willis go, yeah, as he's like, the studio person is obviously talking a lot. And then eventually he just goes, okay, let me ask you this. Who's your second choice to play John McClane? Long pause. Yeah, that's what I thought.
Yeah.
Boom. And it was like that. You just don't do this. I cannot think of it. And I was trying to think of another movie. Has there ever been an example of somebody, a recast? I mean, there's two things working against this film that are too fundamental to overcome. One is the concept of a boat, which is not fast, and the other is the recasting of Keanu Reeves, or the not even recasting, but you know, it's a
replacement.
The replacement.
Yeah,
those two things together, I think, are just insurmountable. I couldn't think of a single example of a lead character being replaced in a sequel and it working. There were other things like James Bond, you know, characters can kind of come and go. Hannibal, Julianne Moore replacing Jodie Foster as Clarice Starling, but she's not, you know, it's Hannibal. It's
what
sold
about
as
Val
Hannibal.
Kilmer taking over for Batman and Batman Forever? Because I think Val Kilmer's good in that movie, which is not a great movie.
I think that with a movie like that, that's sort of maybe pre-existing, I hate to use the phrase IP, right? A pre-existing character that's sort of larger than the individual movie.
You're right.
Like a Bond or a Batman or a whatnot or a Superman even. You know, that's a debate that's, you know, we're currently kind of wrestling with in pop culture. I think you can survive it. But with something like this, something like it was so much about Keanu. It was so much about him being so perfect for that character that you just couldn't overcome that. So for me, this movie felt like the experience I had on a visceral emotional level was like, it was like being forced to watch someone you love cheat on you for 2 hours and 5 minutes. Or the feeling of, like, you know, if someone's like you have a friend and they get divorced and they're with the new person and you're like, I don't know how I feel about this guy. And like that kind of icky feeling, you know, it just, I felt like such a betrayal. You know, and so, you know, and then the film as itself was just like the cinematic equivalent of a shrug. It was just, I hate this movie. Let's do our fast facts and then we can dig into some of the how and why maybe some of these mistakes were made and perhaps what could have been done differently. But Speed 2 Cruise Control was released in the US by Fox on June 13th, 1997, approximately 1 week after our last film, Con Air, 3 years after the original Speed. Relatively quick for a sequel, at least, you know, it wasn't like it was a long gap. Almost 9 years after Die Hard. Directed by Jan de Bont, produced by Jan de Bont, Steve Perry and Michael Pacer. Screenplay by Randall McCormick and Jeff Nathanson, presumably written in crayon. From a story by McCormick and de Bont, based on characters created by Graham Yost. Stars Sandra Bullock, Jason Patric, and Willem Dafoe. On an estimated budget listed between 110 and 160 million, it grossed 164.5 million. Yeah, some of the... I mean, Jan de Bont says in your episode he's still making money off it, which is kind of interesting.
Well, Bill Mechanic says it lost $50 million in that same episode, so I don't quite know what to. I mean, there is the notion of like how studios creatively package sales deals internationally, and things come out in the wash. Yeah, maybe. Just a couple quick things. First of all, regarding comic book movies, like we're kind of used to different artist renditions of characters too on the page, so that kind of works. With this, it's like, I mean, clearly it was Jack Traven, and they just changed the name when Keanu dropped out and said he wasn't going to do it. So the problem is, take a step back and write a different movie. Right? Don't just go ahead with the same movie, because he's clearly meant to be Jack. He's, they're still together. They're going to get married. That it's all heading in that direction. Like, he's got the same LAPD boss that Jack Traven has, because there's McMahon at the beginning of the movie.
I love him uncredited. He was like, don't put my name on this movie. It's
give me the money, but I don't want to.
Joe Morton said he would do it if he didn't have his name in the credits.
I can go do 50 plays after this, so I'll take the money. Fine.
Totally. Yeah. So I think that's the problem. It's just they needed to take a step back and write a different movie, or just roll with that punch a little better. I mean, to do the same movie and just transplant somebody, it's not even, if I'm Jason Patric, I'm like, come on, no, like, we got to do something else. It's not setting him up very well.
I agree, and I have thoughts about that in the hero section specifically. I want to ask you guys.
Well, one of the notes I wrote down was this originally
my cocktail.
Yeah, enjoy. It's a little early, but hey, you do you.
Wow.
It's virgin. Don't worry. It's
one of the things I wrote down was this originally supposed to take place a week after Speed? Like, they go on vacation to escape, like, because I think that would work. Like, they go on vacation, because one of the things we talked about in our episode about Speed a while back was, like, it's actually kind of a romantic movie, right? It's like, it has this meet cute element. They fall in love. No two actors, I think, have ever had better chemistry on screen. Keanu even says that in your episode. He's like, Sandra and I had great chemistry. And so, like, I would be really into this if, like, the sequel were them being like, let's get out of LA, let's go on a cruise, let's, like, get to know each other. We've known each other for 2 days or whatever, and then this shit happens. And, like, there are even little things. I remember in the trailer, and it's in the movie, when the bomb goes off and Sandra's like, no, keep dancing. Like, that kind of reclaims a little bit of Annie's spirit to me from the original, like, and I remember laughing at that in the trailer, but, like, this movie could have worked in my mind if they got Keanu, and if it's like an extension of them getting to know each other and her kind of being like, I don't know if I can be with this guy. Because she even says in this movie, like, he's what does she say? Like, an adrenaline junkie. That's why she left him. Like, I think it's a movie that could work if it takes place right after Speed, and it's a getting to know you kind of, if this is like a before midnight trilogy, this is the second part.
I would make a bunch more changes.
Yeah, totally.
I mean, like, I think the villain's terrible too, and I'm sure we'll get to that. But that whole element is
absolutely will. The leeches. We've got to talk about the leeches. Here's the other thing, though, I want to say about this, and which brings us very nicely into our next section, which I'll cue you up for, Liam, in a moment. But there was a concept explored for a Die Hard sequel that derived from this spec script that I believe was called Troubleshooter. Eventually, and this, where it was basically going to be this. It was John and Holly on a cruise, and terrorists took over the cruise. But it was rejected because it was like the pop culture had evolved. You think they did Die Hard 2, which was basically, the same shit happens in a similar scenario. It was an evolution, but it was broadly the same. But by Die Hard with a Vengeance, which is 2 years prior to this, right? Remember, we did a whole episode about all of these other concepts that were explored for Die Hard with a Vengeance that were rejected by the same studio, by 20th Century Fox, because they were like, this is just repetitious. And the cruise liner thing that many people had tried to crack as a scenario for terrorism didn't work. They were able to do it with the script Dreadnought that ended up becoming Under Siege, the original Under Siege, right? That's a very different kind of movie. Works like gangbusters, but this cruise ship thing just fundamentally didn't work. So I just think it's interesting that they were behind the curve in this, like, trying to make this concept work. And I think, as you were saying, Chris, Jan de Bont just had so much clout off the back of Speed and Twister, that 1-2 punch of gigantic, big spectacle, blockbuster movies, that he felt he could just, power this thing through. But ultimately, it was doomed. But let's move into our section where we just pinned some of this stuff down as to why we're talking about it in the context of Die Hard.
I just want to say a movie that does work in that way with a cruise liner is Juggernaut from the 70s, which was actually a movie that Walter Parks and Laurie McDonald mentioned that they kind of referenced in the kind of development of the Speed screenplay. And I believe it turns out that in that movie, the bad guy is a jilted former police guy, and that's kind of what led to Howard Payne being who he is and stuff. So good movie, Juggernaut. Cruise liners are hard though, and that concept of a potential Die Hard concept, I was going to ask you guys about because you would know more about it than I do. Was the writer of that script, Troubleshooter, one of the writers credited on Speed 2? Did it even extend that far?
I don't.
Okay.
I certainly don't. I'd have to. I mean, I'm saying off the cuff without fact checking. No, because Troubleshooter was it was a concept that was considered for Die Hard 3 that was ultimately, I think, abandoned. So I don't think it had any bearing on this. So but I could be wrong. I'd have to. Yeah, I'd have to. I'd have to double check. But I think that.
Right.
But to the point of the connections between them, let's move into our next section to pin that down, which is called
Die Hard DNA. Trying to do a Willem Dafoe.
Oh, very good.
Speed
Yeah, I got it.
Yeah,
No, I received that deep into my heart.
I love Willem. I just want to say it before we get into that section.
Yeah, we're going to cover our bases on that. But this is a classic Die Hard on a blank premise. And to your point, Chris, it's not so much that I think a cruise ship is a bad location. Look at Poseidon Adventure, right? Or there's been many other films that can work, but not for Speed.
Yeah, not when it has to go fast.
Right? Like it doesn't. Be on a boat by all means. Have at it, but not if it needs to. The movie's called Speed, So, but this is a classic Die Hard on a blank premise in the sense that it's bad guy takes over a blank, up to one guy or small group to fight back. In this case, it's just the one bad guy as opposed to several bad guys. There are no additional terrorists, which is a detriment to some extent, but was also true of the original Speed. Right? It was just Howard Payne, Dennis Hopper. Like Die Hard, the movie begins in LA. The plot kickstarts when a party atmosphere is interrupted by a terror attack. Again, that's another Die Hard beat. It's a 20th Century Fox movie, as we mentioned. It's the same studio that made Die Hard. And if you believe the Valverde-verse theory that we talked about in our Ricochet episode and in detail and a little bit in our Speed episode, technically this movie takes place in the same cinematic universe as Die Hard. If you're interested in that, check out the Ricochet episode. We go deep on it. And it also has some Die Hard with a Vengeance DNA via the presence of, did you spot her? Colleen Camp.
Yes.
Who plays,
of course,
Connie Kowalski. Isn't she great? She was one of my few bright spots in this. Just to explain, so she plays Connie Kowalski, one of the other detectives in McClane's unit in Die Hard with a Vengeance, and here she plays a character called Debbie, who is one of the passengers on the ship, and she's sort of very memorable, isn't she? And chatty and
there's a bit of a who's who of Die Hard on a blank previous. Well, no, I guess we didn't cover on In the Line of Fire, but In the Line of Fire, one of the actresses in this movie is the woman who gets killed by Malkovich in her home in The Line of Fire, right?
So there's from Minnesota. Real
who's who. You shouldn't have been from Minnesota. There's a real who's who of actors in this movie that kind of come from this tradition, including Friends, one that I bet's going to come up on the quiz, but we'll see.
And the final one being, that I have, and I want to kick it over to you guys. Of course, it's directed by Jan de Bont, who, lest we forget, was the director of photography on a little movie called Die Hard. Any other connections or thoughts that you guys spotted that maybe I missed between this and?
I think that covers it. I think we're already kind of bending over backwards a little bit.
Yeah, the studio being referenced feels like we're looking for whatever. Yeah, exactly.
I have 7 Die Hard DNA things here.
Also a Fox movie.
And that's a great get out of jail card for me. That's how I was able to do True Lies.
I'll give you one other, which is that maybe this isn't even, but the crew on this ship doesn't trust Jason Patric at first, right? And they kind of come around to trust him. And I guess in Die Hard, the only person that really ever trusts John McClane is Al Powell, right? But there's a little bit of just the kind of reluctant to help people in the background who think this is just who is this guy? He's just a loose cannon. But beyond the premise, it doesn't feel so close. I guess Dafoe's money motivations have something in common with Gruber.
Yeah, vibe-wise, it doesn't really feel like Die Hard, but it definitely is. It's a Die Hard on a blank movie for sure. But we will dig into all of that. We're going to dig into Anatomy of an Action movie, and we're going to put this film on blast, on trial.
Like we've been really chill with it so far.
Yeah. But we're going to take it to the next level after this quick break. And we're back with our next section of the show, Anatomy of an Action movie, where we explore the tenets.
We live in a Twilight world.
There are no friends at dusk. Premise being the first one. We're not getting in a tenet. We're not going down a tenet rabbit hole. The first tenet of Anatomy of an Action movie is the premise. Oh gosh. Okay, so the premise
deep breaths, Phil. Deep breaths. Keep dancing. Keep dancing.
Okay. Woosah. Okay. Serenity now. we're while on a vacation cruise in the Caribbean with her new boyfriend. Oh, even saying it's like it's painful. Alex Shaw, played by Jason Patric. Annie, Sandra Bullock, and Alex find themselves caught up in a nefarious terror plot orchestrated by John Geiger, Willem Dafoe, a disgruntled computer programmer seeking revenge on the shipping company who abandoned him when he became ill due to their work conditions. Geiger
healthcare commentary?
Right. I totally sympathize with the guy. Geiger seizes control of the cruise ship's computer systems and threatens to destroy the vessel and everyone on it, so the ticking clock becomes, can Alex and Annie solve the problem and foil Geiger's plan before the cruise ship crashes? Not exactly there's a bomb on a bus, if it goes above 50, it blows up. Or, you know, like the clean simplicity of Speed that we talked about in that episode is the best premise ever. This is just so unwieldy, even, you know, right out the gate. Tell us why. You know, we sort of touched on it, but digging in a little bit more detail, why is this such a terrible premise?
Well, I think it's this weak attempt to mirror what happened in the first movie, having this jilted villain, this guy who wants to get revenge on his you know, work scenario. It's like it's such a like lesser than attempt to do that again. And can you imagine being the guy, like, who sat down and came up with this shit? Okay, so he wants to get revenge on the shipping company, and he's got what could have happened? Oh, he's got copper poisoning. Yeah. And then we'll get leeches. We'll get leeches, and he'll have to put leeches on himself. Like what rabbit hole did this writer start to go down? To
this point, and we try and keep away from anything, you know, political on this show, but this stuff literally felt Trumpian to me. It was like, they're leeches. The Democrats say that the leeches are gonna cure the copper. The wind causes the copper.
They're eating the copper inside of me.
It's that level of crazy. Yeah. Like the idea that the computers cause copper poisoning, which can be counter-cured by leeches. That feels like just
I actually think
it feels like going down a rabbit hole when you're writing a script where you're just like, you're excited about what you're trying to make happen, and then the level to which you have to jump hurdles to make it happen, and you never take a step back and say, wait, this is getting too much. Like, I need to simplify this, remove this, it's just, it goes too far to just connect those dots.
Surely an executive should have been, hold on. Sorry, did you say leeches? Like someone have said, what are we talking about? I mean, I'm all for it in like, if it was
Dafoe in the background Batman, going like,
if it was a Joel Schumacher Batman movie, I might be, sure, leeches. But what it just feels so, Speed is a pretty grounded movie. The original movie is like quite, you know, it's outlandish and it's bombastic, but it's fairly grounded. It's within its own world. It all feels very believable because the characters act in believable
city bus.
ways.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah, it's like, it's a kind of gritty is kind of the wrong word, but certainly grounded,
rooted in reality.
Then there's this other added element of the diamonds.
Oh gosh.
Oh yeah, the diamonds.
I literally go back and listen. Yeah, exactly. Go back and listen to episode 44, by the way, 50 miles per hour, to hear my 8-year-old son review this movie.
Oh,
and we're both like, wasn't there something about diamonds in there? Like, it's like there's this added element of him breaking into this safe room or whatever to get diamonds. Why are there diamonds in there? I don't even know. Like, just compounded absurdities.
There's something about there's something about like them carrying wealth on the ship, and I forget what it is, but like
I'm sure some line explained it.
Like, to your point, I think I like, Speed is built into my body. Like, I rewatch Speed and I feel the original feelings that I felt when I saw it the first time. Like, that's the beauty of a movie. Speed 2 is like, whoosh, it's just gone. it's gone from my memory. And I think that's what I see when you say something is memory holds, right? It's like it doesn't hold any water culturally, right?
It has zero impact. I had the same thing with I listened to the How Did This Get Made episode about this movie after watching it. And they were talking about the diamonds thing, and I was like, wait, did that happen? It's like this movie pulls a magic trick on you because it's so ephemeral and ridiculous that none of it will stick in your brain except for just the vagaries of how bad it is. And the other thing, how I would just pin down the premise. We talked about a little bit on that episode the genius of specifically being a bus as opposed to the antecedents of Speed, like Runaway Train or Bullet Train, the Japanese one, or John Frankenheimer's The Train. The train's a great scenario for an action movie, but it's basically going through unpopulated territory for the most part, as opposed to a bus, which has to deal with all kinds of obstacles and other traffic and other kinds of craziness, especially in a heavily congested city like Los Angeles, as opposed to this, which is a slow boat moving slowly through a relatively unpopulated environment towards other static objects, right? That just at a fundamental level. Yeah. And I just cannot get past that nobody was like, hold on a second. Like, the movie doesn't even, forget the fact that it moves slowly. For half the movie, it's not even moving at all. In the whole of the second act, the boat is just stationary. I'm like, how long is it going to take these jerk-offs to get off this boat? Like, it feels like it's
that's
an
the
hour.
Dumbest part. It's kind of like when, Passenger 57, well, they land the plane and do some stuff and then get back on the plane. Like, it's just weird beat in the middle of that movie.
Yeah.
In the middle of this movie, you're going to get rid of the hostages?
Right.
It's just so odd. And I remember you guys might recall on the episode about it, Mark Mancina talking about having to score that sequence and just and Jan wanting him to make it more exciting. And it's kind of like, Jan, it ain't the music, pal. Yeah. Like,
he's doing yeoman's work trying to make this in any way feel
the score is a great example of like the fall from grace from Speed to Speed 2, because like, you have these like beats and then it's like like as quietly as possible. It's like uncanny
valley. Put that life jacket on and then like, slowly go down a ladder and get in a lifeboat. Maybe
it's like one solo trumpet. Like, it's just I
swear to you, to that point, that the 20th Century Fox logo is out of tune as well. At the beginning of the movie, I swear it's like discordant. I don't know. Go and listen to it.
It's like Alien 3, but not in a good way.
Yeah, exactly. Like, and I love it when movies play with the studio title, like Alien 3 being the all timer and Event Horizon, and the various other.
They do that again in Romulus, don't they?
They do.
I think they do. Yeah.
They do it in a lot of movies, actually.
In this movie, it's almost like from the word go, they're like, oh gosh, just we've got your money. Just we're sorry. It has like that energy, Yeah. The other thing about this movie that I think is interesting are, and you'll know a lot about this because I'm sure you've interviewed all of these people. Are one of the things that can be fun about a sequel are the fact that other characters find ways to reappear, right? Like, and in Die Hard 2, pretty big contrivance and coincidence that Dick Thornburg and Holly McClane happen to be on the same flight, right? But within the world of that movie, you just kind of, you don't really question it. It's fun. You go with it. But I found that like contrivances in this movie really just eye-rolling. Like that bit where the character Susan Barnes as Constance, who is the lady from the elevator in the original Speed, appears and kind of as one of the passengers
Different
randomly.
Character, but
right? Yeah. And is like, oh, I think I've experienced something like this before. And it just doesn't have the fun of the Dick Thornburg. You're just like, really?
Yeah.
And
there would have been more. I mean, he wanted to get Alan Ruck back, and Alan said he couldn't do it because he was going to do Spin City.
Yeah,
he wanted
needed
to get
those residuals.
Thank God he made that choice. He'd been still making money off Spin City.
That's what he said. He literally said, I dodged a bullet. Patrick Fischler, he tried to get back from the elevator sequence, but after having done Twister and being kind of stuck out in the middle of nowhere on that movie and waiting every day, he just didn't want to go through the Jan de Bont gamut again.
Can I compliment Jan de Bont? Because I don't think this is a good movie. I think it looks good, like I said, but like I do think it's on like a meta level, this is like a fascinating movie of like a guy makes a movie that kind of everyone doesn't expect to explode. He makes like an action movie masterpiece. He's an artist through and through. And then like, this is sort of a great example of like a lone artist against a machine, right? Like, because he doesn't, development isn't his thing, right? That's what Hollywood exists in theory, to develop movies in a great way. And when you're this kind of like, you know, Dutch cinematographer who's gone on and made like 2 banger movies, like it's sort of an interesting David v. Goliath kind of situation, because he's just he's trying to make a good movie, and he's like overwhelmed.
If David had a giant fucking ego coming off a Twister, I mean, like,
fair enough.
To be fair, I mean, I love the guy, but like you ask just about anybody who was sort of disinvited from this one, Graham Yost, Mark Gordon, he wanted it to be his thing, and he just showed that it's not his thing to do this, to develop this material.
It is interesting that, you know, it's a subtle but key distinction that being a great filmmaker doesn't necessarily mean that you are a great
producer,
storyteller. And that might seem so counterintuitive, but it's sort of 2 different skills. You know, you talk extensively on 50 Miles Per Hour about the amount of rigorous development and other top writers that came on. First of all, Graham Yost has this incredible concept, develops it, and then you have Paul Attanasio's pass on it and Joss Whedon's pass on it, and the dialogue punch up, and you parse through all of that in incredible detail. But that script was put through the ringer and was, you know, turned into speaking of diamonds, you know, something that was perfect, you know, so that when you actually go and shoot it, all of that stuff is there, and then it's enhanced by all of his brilliance in the casting and all the rest of it. But they're actually not just because you can direct doesn't mean, you know, you can develop and write material. The other thing I want to say about this film, though, that I found very strange, and then we'll move on to our section about the heroine, is the tone. I found that I'm expecting like Adam Sandler and Jennifer Aniston to rock up in like cargo shorts and be like, okay, guys, like it felt like a Netflix vacation comedy. You know, it's like, where's Rob Schneider as the wacky waiter? You know, it's the tone of it is really strange, especially once they're on their ship. And it kind of is established, and this will bring us into our section about the heroine, because so Sandra Bullock as Annie, you know, from the opening scene, she has been established in the previous movie as highly competent, highly intelligent, and most specifically, an incredible driver. Driving a bus is not easy, right? She is a brilliant driver. She is cool under pressure. And then this version of her is like ditzy rom-com, you know, like, I mean, Sandra Bullock is so amazing that even in this, with nothing to work with and all of these portrayals, she's still funny, luminous, charming, you know, just still a great movie
it's
star.
Just not the same. Like, but it's just not the same thing.
That opening scene where she's doing the wacky driving test, I'm like, what is this? This does feel like a broad comedy. You know,
it's like the MTV Movie Awards sketch or something. That's Speed. And she's also she becomes this sort of damsel who is so like just caught up in the stuff going on with Jason Patric. I did not put myself through watching this again last night, so I'm trying to remember. But like, you know, the stuff about the marriage and everything, it's just like she's so not strong. Whereas in Speed, she's so strong.
Yeah, she's
what I mean?
Sidelined, doesn't she? She's so sort of passive in that. She's in Speed. She's literally driving the action. In this, it's like, you're here too, and it's all about this guy who we are predisposed to dislike because he's replacing a character and an actor that we felt a relationship with.
It's literally like when like a girl brings home a boyfriend and the parents liked the previous boyfriend a lot, and the new guy is like this like pale imitation. Like, it really has that vibe. With no disrespect to Jason Patric, who I think in the right role is a good actor. But this is just like you can feel it in his eyes, in his beautiful eyes. This guy is like, this isn't it.
Well, let's talk
about it. I think he could actually reprise this role, but I'll talk about that.
Yes,
I'm excited.
We'll come to that. We heard your interesting
Let's announce it today.
Because I don't want to. I literally don't have a bad word to say about Sandra Bullock. So, you know, I think she does a great job in an impossible set of circumstances. I don't think it's a bad performance or anything. I don't think she does anything wrong. I think she's just you know, drowning, not waving. You know, through no fault of her own. She's just stuck in this situation. Let's talk then about, I think maybe
she could have spoken up. She could have spoken up. I mean, I was thinking about this today. Like, I don't want to act like I mean, she's fantastic. She's beyond reproach, but she doesn't escape responsibility here. I think. I mean, she was still young in her career,
though. Yeah,
yeah.
Does she have the juice, you know, to like really at this point in this
maybe 10 years later
career,
she would have known
so. Yeah.
the moves to make there, but and this is the guy who made her a star basically, so you're going to kind of defer, but I just feel like she had to know that this character had suffered on the page and that it was just not going to turn out.
Maybe she was just too, you know, maybe she was too nice in this situation.
That's
you know, maybe
possible.
You need to throw your weight around a bit.
She does seem like the nicest woman who's ever lived in Hollywood. So
angel.
She's just not. Angel. She's just maybe just not that kind of person that would be, you know, maybe she's too much, you know, too much of a people pleaser. Or
there's a reason she doesn't want to talk about the movie to this day. So.
Well, I have nothing bad to say. I genuinely have nothing bad to say about her. But on the other hand, let's talk about the second hero, Jason Patric as Alex Shaw. Again, he's given an impossible job, and like you know, Jason Patric's been great in a bunch of other movies where like Rush, Narc.
Narc, yeah, I forgot about Narc.
What's the noir that really put him on the map after the 1990 noir from the Jim Thompson novel?
Or did you say Rush?
I said Rush.
After Dark, My Sweet, or something.
Oh
like
yeah,
that,
yeah,
right?
yeah.
Like
right.
He's really amazing in that, but it's a impossible job, but it's a terrible casting decision. And not just the replacement of Keanu, which is a terrible decision, period, but specifically this actor. And I was thinking about who one of the people that they had explored was Matthew McConaughey, who is up and coming at this point in his career. And I feel like if
now
there
this boat's going fast.
Just hear me out here, right? If there was a scene where you have a warm, likable actor like that, right? And there's a scene where the character kind of has a come to Jesus moment with Annie, but it's effectively it's with the audience, basically saying, "Look, I know I'm not Jack, and I'll never live up to that, but I really love you, and I just want you to give me a chance." It's to that effect. And you had a character that maybe and again we use these horrible reductive terms, that was maybe more of a beta male that feels so intimidated by the ghost of Jack Traven, as it were. As this ultimate macho, badass, adrenaline junkie, can-do guy. And he feels kind of like, how can I ever live up to that? And then he had to rise to the moment. Maybe with the right actor and a different scenario, that could have, it still would have sucked, but it wouldn't have sucked this badly, you know. But to make him the same, to make him a facsimile, right? You know, SWAT guy, badass alpha type, you know, and the fact that Jason Patric, who is very insular as an actor, comes across a little bit cold, you know, and he's worked brilliantly in parts like with that, but not. It has to be was just doomed upon doomed upon doomed, you know.
This was sort of the movie where he decided, okay, I'll try to be this guy. And it's just not the movie to try that with, man. Like to fill in for that character.
Yeah.
Some of that might have worked. But then it's like, can you find an actor who would want to do that? Because it's literally a role defined by another actor and in its very narrative essence. And I don't know that, you know, good luck finding an actor who might even want to do that. I think part of the problem was finding a young actor to do this. It was at a time when young action stars were not a prevalent thing, much as was an issue with casting Speed. And someone speaks about that in the movie. I mean, in the episode. So it was just sort of who they were left with. And it came down to the wire. Jan talks about how, you know, the start date was looming and they were doing these tests with Jason and Sandra, and it was clear the chemistry was so-so. But, you know, the thing that Jan says in that episode that is funny to me, he says, because I asked him, you know, what would you do differently? And he says, well, you have to have the cast lined up first and foremost, right? And I'm thinking, no, you cast Dennis Hopper 2 weeks into shooting on Speed.
That's true.
Like sometimes it's alchemy, right? That comes together and makes a movie sing. So it's not necessarily that. I think it's probably a string of things. But I always just thought that was interesting because it's not as clear cut as we have to have this person lined up. You might want to have your actual star of the movie lined up,
right?
But because the
everything
villain,
else
Dennis
you could
Hopper
work
being
around,
cast later is different. But
it's a cornerstone of the whole thing. You just cannot. If Keanu is not on board, you just can't make it. Like I say, it goes back to the Bruce Willis thing. Who's your second choice for Jack Traven? You just don't do it.
You know what she should have done?
It had never been done either. Never been done successfully.
This is what they should have done. Why does she need a co-lead?
Yes,
why can't she be the action heroine of the movie?
That would rock.
Yeah.
I mean, that's what's happening here. That's who you're carrying over. That's the star you're bringing along from the first movie. Why do you need to supplement Jack Traven at that point? Figure out a way to make her the hero, full stop. But this was obviously at a time where they weren't thinking about things like that.
Yeah, and she's gone on to do incredible work in those types of characters. The other thing that I just feel and we'll move on, but Jason Patric, even with all of these things working against him, I still really dislike the character's actions. First of all, he lies to her about his job. So that's like
so convenient. It's like a screenwriting football. It's like
the idea of that whole opening sequence is so terrible. We're supposed to believe a motorcycle can't outrun a delivery truck by the magic of Mark Mancina, right? And the editing of the way.
And you're also supposed to believe that it crescendos in the same place where her driving test crescendos. Like that whole nonsense.
It's almost like a screwball comedy that's toned wrong. Like that's kind of what I also wrote down.
What is that delivery truck doing that requires an LAPD SWAT team to set up a roadblock to intercept them? Stealing computers. Which is apparently enough to be on the news as well. Like the computers have been reported to have been recovered. I'm saying to my wife, oh, thank God they recovered the computers. We can sleep tonight. It's just so
you
crazy.
Held a vigil for those computers. I remember.
I was really worried about it. I need to turn on the news and know what's happened to those 5 stolen computers that were made by NEC.
But yeah.
I have to know. But the other thing is that there's a scene where Patric and Sandy are either side of this glass door, and there's a grenade on the door, and he's trying to walk her through how to defuse this grenade. And I'm thinking, isn't this the woman you love? She's going to blow her fucking hand off. Just take the death at that point. Like, just that is so unlikable as a character choice to be like, no, you need to fiddle with it. She's going to get maimed or killed. So even within the fact that all of these other things are sort of doomed at the inception point, the choices along the way are terrible and ill-conceived. But the one thing I will say is I do love his Hawaiian shirt, and he looks good in the movie, and he's a very fine actor. Just totally wrong for this. Let's talk about the villain.
Why? No, I don't know. I got to stop this. It's got to.
Willem Dafoe as John Geiger. I've talked enough. Say your pieces about. Let's start with Kris. What do you like? You're following up Dennis Hopper, an amazing villain, amazing performance, an iconic actor. Willem Dafoe goes beyond saying how incredible he is, and the body of work he's done over the last 30 plus years is, as to use your phrase, beyond reproach. However, your thoughts on?
I think he's terrible in this. Actually, I think that Willem Dafoe is a fantastic actor, but my hot take is that he's given his share of terrible performances over his career. There's just some times where I just think he misses. And I don't think that the script was doing him any favors here, but good Lord, this is a bad performance on top of a bad role. I think about the moment where he kills the captain a lot. It's so ham-fisted and weird and just like what he's saying. And that's the moment where he's ostensibly supposed to be giving his motivation.
Yeah, he spells out his motivation for no reason.
To this guy who has no idea who he is or what. It's like, I got nothing to do with that, bro.
Yeah, he's like, what are you telling me for? Like, no, it's for them. Like, he points at the camera.
And he kills him in the dumbest, weirdest way. Like, that captain's
so
goes out like such a bitch. Like, just like slams that thing into him and he falls over. And I'm just like, okay, well, I don't know. As I said, it's just this poor attempt to imitate kind of the motivations of Howard Payne in a sense and have that connectivity. I don't know why you feel a need to have that connectivity. Just the golf ball stuff, like having there's just so much bending over backwards to have something unusual in the script that just
well, and I'll double down on your point, Chris.
Out a lot on this one. I'm sorry.
If the character is unusual, and then you cast an actor who's who got nominated for an Oscar for playing a maybe Count Orlok in Shadow of the Vampire, he really clings to weird roles. That's why he's so good in like Wes Anderson movies, right? So like, if you double down on this is a weird character with a weird actor, it's a little bit too much. Whereas like maybe if they'd cast a more stoic-minded, smaller actor, it could have been rooted in something. I also would say that the movie never gives him what a bomb is, Jack. It's a cheap watch. It's a cheap watch, right? Like they don't give him that like elemental angst that. Well, that's
Hopper
because
I don't think
Joss
Whedon had a big hand in this. I know he did some work on it, but not to the level he did on Speed. And a lot of that flavor in Speed, whatever you think of Joss Whedon, you owe it to his work because he gave it that kind of pulse.
Totally.
This movie doesn't have that pulse at all.
I'll say one last thing about Willem Dafoe, which is I saw Willem Dafoe on stage when I lived in New York a couple times in like weird avant-garde theater stuff.
Wooster Group stuff,
and Richard Foreman stuff. And he was always incredible, even if the plays are weird. And I just have to say, if this paid for him to do 15 of those, go for it, Willem.
Like, I don't, I mean? Like,
yeah, exactly. It's like how Joe Morton was like, I did it for the money. Like,
absolutely.
It's one of those kind of like.
He was interestingly part of the search for Howard Payne too. They went out to him for Howard Payne.
And we just talked about Con Air and how he was auditioned for Cyrus the Virus. But that thing is, versus Howard Payne, he just doesn't feel powerful.
Willem Dafoe auditioned.
Apparently,
he read in 1997.
According to the research I did, him, Tom Sizemore, and Mickey Rourke all read for the part. Bruce Willis was offered.
I guess he just didn't find it beneath him to read for the part.
Yeah, I mean, chemistry reading or whatever, or they just want to see him in that, how he would perform those lines. I don't know. But he was at this. This was, remember, we have to remember this is pre Green Goblin, right? Like I think we think,
but it's
now,
post Platoon.
Sure. Like he's obviously been, exceptional for a long time, but not necessarily like a mainstream household name that I think you are when you do a supervillain, Yeah. But the other thing about this character is opposed to Howard Payne's powerful because Dennis Hopper is powerful. This guy is like weak and pathetic. I actually feel sorry for him. You kind of want him. You got screwed, and I kind of want you to succeed, but that's just not the energy you want for your villain in a massive.
I think about him at the end of the movie, in the plane chase, and he's like, she starts to get away, and he's like, Annie, you're supposed to be my hostage. Yeah. What the fuck was that?
I'm laughing because I started thinking about a movie that I abhor, Boondock Saints. I hate it with the Fire of a Thousand Suns, but I just thought about the moment when he goes, "There was a firefight."
Oh yeah. He's capable of, and that was the other one I thought of where I'm like, ooh. You're taking some big swings, and sometimes you kind of flame out.
You need a partner and a director who can really shape that.
Yes,
totally. Yep.
Yes.
Well said.
Let's talk about the action of this movie. Is there? I mean, every sequence in Speed is perfect on the action level as well, right? Like so well choreographed, designed, conceived, and executed. I think of the bus jump, right? As opposed to what I love about the bus jump, and we talked about a bit in this episode about how that whole movie is about problem solving on the fly, and it's about your intellect solving a series of seemingly insolvable problems, one coming after another, right? And they all work together to do that. Like the bus jump, it's a team effort. They're all thinking about the weight distribution and the speed and all these other sort of things that are going on. And that's kind of to some extent the apex of the action in that movie, and that incredible. That's one. It
might be the apex of the action of the decade.
Absolutely, right? Yeah. And there's all these converging forces that go into that, as opposed to in this movie where it's like when the boat bounces off the tanker, it just felt like random good fortune. It was just like, oh, I guess the thing we were worried about isn't a problem, as opposed to it being a bunch of people work really hard to solve this problem.
Can I play devil's advocate?
He was down there kind of trying to get the rudder turned or whatever for that whole deal.
I must have zoned out.
I think, he is.
There is a whole sequence going on there to make that happen. That's what's funny.
I was falling asleep
the whole story
the first time.
You forgot.
But I will say that one thing it does do, I'm not saying it's good, is that it does take the time to cut back to the hostages, and you're like, oh, like, it has the kernel. It's not a good movie. It has the kernel of like if it did a better job of rooting us in the role of the hostages and feeling like we like them. Because the other thing about this movie is that like there's a lot of fat jokes, and it's so like, what are we doing? Like, why are we making jokes at the expense of the hostages before we're supposed to care about them? Like, it doesn't feel like it cares about the hostages the way that the original did.
About the tone.
Yeah.
Right? The tone is so off. And that brings us in elegantly into our next section about the humor, because to that point,
hilarious movie.
The humor is so broad and stupid. And by the way, what the fuck is going on with that Crimson Tide reference? Like, what was that? The bit where they do the Gandolfini dialogue verbatim.
Oh, you're
from,
right.
From
Silent,
Crimson Tide.
Yeah.
Where he's asking about the submarine movie. Like, suddenly it's like,
I forgot that.
Yeah, but that's what this movie does, right? You have these giant memory gaps because it makes no impression on you because it's just wet spaghetti. You know,
what
so bizarre.
Something my son and I talked about in his review of the film was whenever they're like, is there a little girl in there? And the guy goes, no little girls, just big women. To your point about the fat jokes. And I had to tell my son, that's kind of like a 1997 joke.
Yeah.
Because he thought it was funny. And I'm like, it's not very funny, but this is why.
And by the end, it's like Sharknado level broad. You know, when the realtor sees the boat approaching, his eyes are like, boing! You know,
oh my God.
Like a cartoon. And then a guy literally says, my car. And like it's fucking Inspector Gadget shit, man.
The lady on the phone looking back at the cruise ship, like, I'm making this weird.
That's so bad. Let's leave Inspector Gadget out of this. Okay, Gadget's good. Not the movie, but Gadget good. Okay.
And about the action, by the way, just to say, look at the action beats. It's trying to get a lifeboat unsecured or whatever, and get the people off there. It's such a weak action beat. You've got like another elevator sequence in a speed movie, this time just on a cruise ship with the little girl. That whole bit. And by the way, the whole thing about her being in love with Jason Patric.
Ooh, that's creepy, huh?
Wouldn't have gone there with that. It's just kind of odd. And there's just not opportunities for action on a boat is the bottom line. There's just not opportunities for action.
I forgot about the deaf girl. Oh my God. Jeez.
Yeah. I'm going to come up to her in a second. Let's, okay. I think we've given this film a fair shake.
Out of this movie.
We've been very fair.
Well, as
we've been
Kris
very
said
fair
in the
and even-handed.
This might be the movie that breaks you guys, and I think he was right.
You got to be real. Like, if giving someone a fair shake doesn't mean you just let it off the hook if it cost $160 million and sucks. Let's move on to the Die Hard Oscars. We'll get out of our Hawaiian
a water
shirts
or like maybe some blood pressure medication.
I'm good. I just like saying that because I'm channeling that bit in with Kim Coates in Bad Boys that I think about a lot, where he goes, "Oh yeah, well I'm a stand-up comedian and I suck, so I'm gonna need your car."
I need your car.
So I just think about that.
That is really good. I'm putting the sunglasses back on. I'm following Tapley.
Let's Nicholson this shit. Okay, the Die Hard Oscars, aka the Action Movie Awards. Our first category is, I'm going to ask for your silence at this difficult time, the John McClane Yippee-Ki-Yay Award for Best Line. And our nominees are... That's the sound of a tumbleweed passing through. I don't have one good line. And I looked. Not one.
I laughed so hard
for
my
the
side
first
hurts. Like
time
I'm in pain right now.
In Die Hard on a Blank history, not one good line in this film. Can you think of a single decent piece of dialogue?
You go first, Liam.
No. Let me look at my...
I got nothing.
I'm looking at the IMDb quotes page.
Yeah, that's what I looked at.
Was there a reference to Lolita?
Annie, come back. You're my hostage.
Yeah, that's it. I wrote down... Oh, yeah, no, I don't think so. I don't think so. I did write down the word Lolita, and I was like, is that a line? But I think
doing? Why is that in there? Why is that in there?
That's Jan's Kubrick thing. There's 2001 on the Chinese theater and Speed. There's Twister. They're watching The Shining on the...
But it's not appropriate.
Might not have gone with Lolita. Fair enough. Do Dr. Strangelove or something. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, I wrote that down because I was kind of wondering, like, is there going to be something about this? And then there's that little the little girl who's in love with him, which obviously is not a Lolita reference, but like,
I think it is.
Anyway.
I think it is. You know, that's probably why it's in there. And it's just like, no.
Traditionally speaking, isn't it true that the captain goes down with the ship, pushes the captain overboard?
That is okay. That's
good.
fun.
Shot.
That's fun. And then I do think it's more the performance, but when the bomb goes off and Sandra Bullock's like, keep dancing, I think that's kind of a fun. It's not a good moment.
That encapsulates the spirit of the whole fucking movie. They're on the Titanic and they're like, keep dancing.
Dancing.
There's a dialogue exchange worth bringing up. Alex, go faster. Maurice, give me one good reason. Alex, if you don't, I'll push you off the boat. Maurice, that's a good reason. Wow. But Glenn Plummer, as evidenced by that episode, had a fucking blast on this movie.
Oh, he's the redemption story.
Speaking of him, let's move on to the Hans Gruber Exceptional Thief Award for stealing the film. This was tough trucking. I will say Tamura Morrison, really solid, as always, as Juliano. Sadly, no Jake the Muss Chaos here for him. Colleen Camp, always a delight. Like she's great.
Love Colleen Camp.
Delightful presence in everything. Joe Morton for getting his paycheck and getting out there quickly. This is my impression of Joe Morton in this movie. Okay, Jack. Alex. No stunts. Can I have my money now?
Yeah.
It's just, like to your point earlier, I saw Joe Morton in David Hare's Stuff Happens playing Colin Powell.
Oh, wow.
And it's tour de force. Like, he's amazing. I couldn't love the guy anymore. I absolutely love him. It's no slight on him whatsoever.
Get paid. Get paid.
Get that money.
He looks like a badass with the bald head in this one.
He does. He looks great.
I love Joe. I mean, we've talked to Joe Morton.
Yeah, he's almost the best thing in pretty much anything he's ever in. And Glenn Plummer reprising his role as Maurice, aka Toon Man. But to be honest, I feel sorry for him because by the time he'd showed up, I was so checked out and so angry that I was just like, I'm sorry, I love Glenn Plummer.
He got paid a ton. He got there in September. He was on the island for 3 months while they were shooting stuff out on the cruise ship, waiting for them to come back. He had the best time on this movie, and he is the only one who did.
Yeah, good luck to him. Do you have a pick?
Morton.
For stealing the movie?
Stealing the movie.
Metatextually, it's Plummer, Glenn Plummer, obviously. But in the movie, just seeing Joe Morton makes you feel better.
Yeah.
I'm going to say it's the Brit who recently passed away, I believe, poor guy, who has to count down from like 13 knots all the way down to 1 over the course of about
Merced?
30 minutes. We keep cutting back to him, and he's like, 10 knots, 9 knots.
Is Patrick Fischler supposed to play the like guy who gets locked in the closet by Willem Dafoe? Is that who he was going to play?
Actually. I
think that would have been interesting.
Yeah.
All right.
I don't know who. No one. I mean, I don't know, man. Nobody steals the movie.
An hour in. I don't know, man.
No one gets away. No one gets away clean.
What an incredible episode! This episode's like breaking lots of records, isn't it? For you?
It is. It is. I mean, well, that's you've got nothing to work with. There's nothing to work with, man. I'm clutching at straws trying to like find some positives. The Dick Thornburg Award for Dick of the Movie, the only person I could think of was the deaf girl's dad, who says his daughter looks like a clown. Why does he do that? I mean, I'm a flawed dad, right? I make mistakes all the time, but my goodness me, like that was so horrible.
Is his wife going to come up in the quiz, Phil?
No.
Okay, do you know who his wife is?
Well, I appreciate you asking that. Go ahead.
Well, that's Louise Childs, who plays Dr. Holly Goodhead in a movie called Moonraker.
Oh.
Who I was in love with. Maybe the worst James Bond movie, but also just when I saw her on screen, I was like, that's Holly Goodhead. I love Holly Goodhead. I mean, I love when I was a teenager, I was in love with Holly Goodhead, and she's all right. See you guys later. No, she's wonderful. And I couldn't believe she's in this movie.
Wow. Is it worse than Speed 2? Is Moonraker worse than Speed 2 or Speed 2 worse?
Speed 2 is worse. I mean, Speed 2 is worse than Moonraker.
Speed 2 is the worst thing ever.
All right, well.
Best Death, presented by...
No more table. Next time you have a chance to kill someone, don't hesitate. I don't know. I don't know. This is good.
That was kind of Seagal-esque. I thought you might do a Willem Dafoe riff. There's only
What's his name again, the character?
John Geiger.
That you're doing there?
Marco.
Oh, Marco.
Yeah, even Marco doesn't want to be a part of this.
Yeah,
Marco's like, I'm out.
I'm on a boat somewhere else.
You're my hostage.
Annie.
You're supposed to be my hostage.
Why are we sounding like Arnold Schwarzenegger now? What happened?
I only have one best death because actually I think it's a weirdly like not much of a body count. But again, I watched it in somewhat of a fog because I was so mentally furious. I think I think
the best death is the Speed franchise. Is actually the answer to this question.
Yeah, right.
The hopes for Speed 3.
Yeah, exactly.
Taking it out the back and shooting
best
it in the head.
Best death is put it out of its misery.
Willem
Dafoe, the captain dies. Willem Dafoe dies.
Yeah,
isn't that it?
Presumably, a lot of people on the island die when the boat hits it, but the movie doesn't go there. There's no best death except maybe the franchise.
The explosion looks cool when the boat explodes.
That's a big explosion. Yeah, big rhythm and hues effect.
But I also have a theory about this. Is
it about leeches and copper poisoning?
No, that's a separate matter. That's a separate thing. The Democrats and the leeches. My note to filmmakers is, unless you're a commando, avoid seaplanes. They are the sign of a doomed movie, right?
Really?
Waterworld, Superman Returns, and this.
I like Superman Returns.
Avoid.
Well, two of those were watchable movies.
There's bits of it. There's bits of it I like. There's bits I like of both those movies, but they're regarded as
Yeah, unless you're Commando
flops.
And you have Power Station coming in over the soundtrack at the end.
See, that's my motherfucking dog right there. The fact that you knew that. I love that song.
Yeah, like Kris Tapley didn't know that.
Bomb.
It's not. You can never get that song. Yeah, he's going off with Ray Dawn
Sing
Chong.
it, go.
I like this has kind of been like a Phil monologue, just a lot of.
I'm sorry. I just had to. I had so. I came in. The sad thing is, I really wanted there to be something in this film where I could be like, there's got to be something here with this level of these craftspeople, these actors.
Yeah, of course.
This franchise, this budget. There has to be something. And there just isn't.
Well, can I ask, this I actually feel like might be a good moment for, Kris, your theory about Speed 3. Because, I'm not a fan of the I'm not a fan of the Spider-Man movie where Andrew Garfield shows up. But, I appreciated that on a meta level, they kind of, found a way to make those movies feel part of the series and kind of vindicated that character. And I think your idea for Speed 3, based on what you've told me, would potentially make this movie feel like it's actually a part of the canon as opposed to a memory hole sequel.
Well, my thing is I just hate it when you just ignore a sequel. It's like, I'm sorry, man, you made the movie. It's there. It's part of the world. It's part of the fabric, and you got to deal with it somehow. And I think it's kind of set up. And this is my pitch, if anyone at 20th Century is listening.
The sunglasses are killing this. This is amazing.
I'll say this. I actually emailed this to Graham Yost, and I told him straight up, I want no remunerative, anything if this ends up in a Speed 3. I told him outright, this one's free. But don't ignore the sequel. And I would make Alex Shaw the villain of Speed 3. I mean, my take would be Jack Traven is bearded, maned, he's lost. He was this thrill seeker, right? And all of that drove Annie away, as is stated in this movie. It was kind of a coping mechanism, right? He never got over Harry. And 30 years later, he's still not over it. He doesn't have the job anymore. It was forced retirement. There's no more thrills to seek, right?
Right.
And, he's got his gold watch, put it that way. And then Alex Shaw, he had Annie. He lost Annie because of Jack Traven's shadow. And Alex left the force. He was no longer a policeman. He went into politics, City Hall, kind of was more his speed.
Which is why we do video.
The money, the women, the power, district attorney, council. We meet him in this movie, Speed 3, as mayor-elect. But before Alex Shaw can take LA's highest office, he has one last score to settle. That's how we rope in Jack Traven with some kind of concept that I can't figure out. Because here's the thing about Speed 3. Typically, the narrative underpinnings of a movie like this are easier to conjure than the character stuff. The character stuff you work on and you kind of have to work through to make it into something substantive. This movie, I feel like I could come up with the character stuff easily. I have no fucking idea what the premise of Speed 3 would be in terms of action.
It's really
because you
hard
cannot
to come
duplicate
up with
it.
Yeah,
if it's a plane or a train, you're on a train or a plane for just extended periods of time. It's not like Speed with a bus where there's like danger lurking at every intersection, you know? It's not as breakneck, and I have no idea what that concept would be.
No, it's
and it's
really
interesting
hard.
that Graham himself had some ideas for Speed too that we didn't talk about, but like he had an idea of one on a boat that would have been like these phosphorus-based explosives, and they're going through the South China Sea, and there's a typhoon, and so there's that.
I thought some of those were interesting in your episode.
Yeah, he had an idea about a plane that couldn't go below a certain altitude, and it's flying through the Andes. So there's that. But again, I just at a certain point, you're going to have to cut between the characters, and someone's going to be in a passive environment. The thing about Speed is everyone's in the active environment from the get-go. And I just don't know what that premise would be. I have no idea.
It's so hard. I literally at one when this was on the collective mind, and we were talking about it, and you were talking about it, I was thinking my mind got busy with it, and I literally was like Googling vehicles, like list every type of vehicle, and I couldn't come up with any concept that would work. It's just, you know, maybe sometime, although, you know, I loved your idea for Speed 3 and bringing Alex as the villain.
Let's make him the villain.
Great. I think that's great. And Jason
Patric will be happy to get that phone call.
He played a great villain in The Losers, which was, he can do that kind of stuff, and it'd be great. He's more suits that, actually, I think, than an action hero. But you know, there's also an argument to say that sometimes the movie's so perfect, it's just a closed loop. You know, it doesn't necessarily need it. It doesn't. This Speed is just so hard to replicate. But that said, a Speed 3 sequel, I'd be well up for if they crack the concept. Let's take our last break and wrap things up real quick with the Double Jeopardy trivia quiz. And we're back with our final section of the show, the Double Jeopardy trivia quiz. By the way, you just remind me because you dropped something into the chat. Bizarrely, on my drive home today, that car that Annie's driving, the yellow, like, weird Volkswagen thing, I swear, and I took a photo of it. I'll share.
I love that
drove
photo.
past me. It drove past me. There was one, like, how you never see those cars. Really weird.
Yeah, normally it's just Cybertrucks in this neighborhood.
Yeah, like the Cybertruck that cut me off the other day and pushed into the Keep Clear section, but it's very on brand. The Double Jeopardy trivia quiz, question number 1. You guys know the rules. One clue. You will collaborate. What is the reason that the oil tanker in the film bears the name Eindhoven?
Eindhoven?
Eindhoven. I don't know.
Is there? So there's a reason?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I would assume it has something to do with Jan. Yep. Is he from Eindhoven?
That's right. It's Jan de Bont's hometown.
That's fun.
Interesting.
That's fun.
Okay, question number 2. Speed 2 cast members Willem Dafoe and Tamora Morrison would appear again in another aquatic adventure movie released in 2018. What was it?
Aquaman.
Tamora and who? Oh, okay.
Aquaman is the correct answer.
I only got that because aquatic. I did not see Aquaman, but yeah. We're so dead, guys.
We're just like, we need to get it the fuck out of here. All right, let's just do this one. All right, question number 3. Gary Oldman turned down the role of the villain in this Die Hard on a Blank film in order to appear as the villain in which forthcoming Die Hard on a Blank movie?
Oh.
What?
Air Force One.
Is correct.
Oh.
Yep. So
he's so good in that movie too.
That's it.
So Gary Oldman was approached for this one.
Apparently so.
Interesting.
That's it. Thank you so much, Kris. It's been a pleasure. We're going to bring you back for another forthcoming Graham Yost joint.
Yeah.
Guys, I'm sorry. I have some breaking news here, and Kris, we can cut this out if we have to, but I just got a text message, and it's for the Beyond Fest, and I just got very excited when I saw this because one thing they're doing is something called the Shane Blackout Marathon, where they're showing Lethal Weapon, The Last Boy Scout, Kiss Kiss Bang Bang, and The Nice Guys all in one day.
Yep.
And then they're also...
This will air afterwards, but yeah, this will be actually, I think, the day after. We've had a big Speed 30th anniversary screening with Jan, Keanu, and Sandra. The first time the three of them have ever sat in front of an audience to talk about that movie. Huge thing. So,
any last plugs, points to make, things we need? We're going to skip our let's skip our Cybertruck shit. We just kind of touched on that. Let's just do you have anything else you want to plug, or where people can find you, Kris, or anything that you want to talk
Chris,
about before we say goodbye?
When does 10 Knots come out? When does season 2 of...
Yeah, I'd like to use this opportunity to announce that... No, God. No, just go check out 50 Miles Per Hour, man. It's sitting there waiting for you, 50 episodes, all about speed. One of them is about speed, too.
And if I may for a second, it's rare that, like, you're like, wow, a movie podcast is the podcast of the year, but it is. It's such an incredible work, and I love it, and it feels... It's just great that it exists and that people are as evidenced by the fact that there was just this 30th anniversary screening at the Egyptian. Like, this movie, I wouldn't say that it's not been heralded, but it's maybe been a little unsung, and I think you're very responsible for it being sung.
Thanks, man. When they make Speed 3, I will absolutely take credit.
Yeah, maybe a story consultant credit.
I can say this much. I have heard that in the last year that 20th Century has reached out to Graham about writing something.
Wow.
I will look forward to that.
Maybe you helped will that into existence. Certainly reignited the public appetite for it, and for to reignite Keanu Reeves and Sandra Bullock. Thank you, Kris. We will look forward to having you back for another Graham Yost movie imminently.
Sorry you had to do this.
It's all right. This is better than therapy. I got a lot of stuff off my chest in a relatively safe environment.
Speed 2 than go to therapy.
Credits, rate, review, subscribe, do all that good stuff. Next time on the show, from the ridiculous to the sublimely ridiculous, Face Off.
Oh, it's Die Hard in a body swap movie. It's also Chris's favorite movie.
Yeah, sure.
It's going to be great. We want to just also, by the way, big thanks to Tyson Hubley for hooking us up with all of our
beautiful
amazing
social
artwork
media
and social media stuff. We love you,
that
Tyson.
Guy.
Come back.
We'll be back next time.
I'm drowning in a life jacket out here. Please,
I'll
Liam.
wait until you're finished, Phil. We'll be back next time with Doves.
Wow.
Die Hard on a Blank is a podcast created and hosted by Philip Gawthorne. Liam Billingham co-hosts and produces the show. Mike Mayer and Michael Sugar are the executive producers. Find us on Twitter and Instagram at DieHardOAB. Rate, review, follow the show wherever you get your podcasts. Most importantly, tell your movie podcast-loving friends about Die Hard on a Blank. Special thanks to Suki Chu. See you next time on Die Hard on a Blank.